right, click the link for Odyssey page, join the channel, join the Patreon, subscribe. Thanks to recent members. Very cool with the Gab Telegram. So this is an incredibly dark topic, and trigger warning. You know the topics about corporations, Netflix, Disney, others vow to provide abortion travel expenses for employees. So that's the top topic. It really can't get any darker than that. And I actually looked up the history of child sacrifices. It's a trip throughout what cultures were really into it and what cultures weren't. The Europeans were not so much into it for some reason. And the general concept is the more valuable something is, you sacrifice it to your higher power. It seems like a lower power, then the greater the sacrifice is going to be. And there's nothing more valuable. There's nothing more pristine than a newborn child, because it has the potential to be, almost anything. It's like it's the greatest sacrifice you can make. But I kind of have to wonder that if you think your deity requires a sacrifice of a child, perhaps you're playing for the wrong team. I kind of want to look for the deity that doesn't require the sacrifice of the child. Maybe you sacrifice your enemy's child or something, but like literally your own child from the tribe. That seems like a weird, convoluted religion. Anyway, so these companies, after the Supreme Court decision, so the Supreme Court decision, Roe came out. Roe was a bad decision in 1973 or something. It's a states' rights issue. All power not enumerated in the Constitution is reserved. That's the 10th Amendment, reserved to the states. It's a very clear, crystal clear states' rights issue. You don't have an argument against that. Abortion is not in the Constitution. It is therefore a states' rights issue. To say there's some convoluted Fourth, Fifth, and 14th Amendment right to privacy is a garbage argument. To hear Biden and Elizabeth Warren come out and say, you have a constitutional right. The Supreme Court for the first time removed a constitutional right. Like, well, where's the Constitution? Oh, it's a constitutional right of privacy and due process and Fourth, Fifth, and 14th Amendment. Like, well, where does it say that? Well, it doesn't actually say that. We have to extrapolate, which is not, unheard of. You have to extrapolate from a lot of things, but it's such a tenuous connection. You look at it, you're like, this is weird garbage. And there's conspiracy theories for the Roe Court decision back in '73 to say, like, there's a whole bunch of conspiracy theories, but YouTube is not a fan of conspiracy theories so much anymore. So it's like, some people mistakenly think that there were going to be these mass uprising and riots over this. No, not really. It's just not. It's not the right energy for a riot, because most people who are protesting are going to be women. They don't have the right energy for it. Yeah, even the men who are on the far left. There's very few men out there who are this fired up about it. They just ultimately they just don't care that much. And it's a convoluted issue. It's like, oh well, it is a states' rights issue, and you're in the state, you can vote against it, and half the states are going to be pro, and half the states are going to be against it. Ultimately you can change the state or you can leave the state. It's just not that. It's not like, no, you're not going to, like, this 2022 is not, they're not going to be mass uprisings over abortion. I think the crowds have been a little bit like, it's like a bunch of women are out there marching. They just don't have the same energy as, the Antifa and BLM riots of 2020, which, and the other conspiracy theory with that is the wrong guy's in office. So if you have riots under Biden, it makes Biden look bad and his administration look bad. And so the puppet masters who are pulling the strings on Biden and pulling the strings on Antifa and all these other groups are going to keep things to a low. Because it's like the hidden hand that kind of runs the government. Anyway, so the decision came out, and all these companies decided to come out and say, well, we're gonna pay you to handle this little problem for us. So corporations are kind of going mask off. Corporations, I guess they think they're taking the moral high ground. Dick's Sporting Goods says that they're going to pay women $4,000 to abort so that they'll be good little worker bee slaves. Why don't you pay first-time moms $4,000? Oh, well, because, they have to be stay-at-home moms, and they're not little worker bees. Oh, okay. It's kind of weird to see corporations step in to essentially delete their workers' children. That seems like a dystopian hellscape, a nightmare world where you put on the sunglasses and it's the same world because the monsters have gone mask off. Abortion's not really my issue, which I realize, I reflect on that. It's kind of It seems like an act of moral cowardice to make something not your issue, to just kind of say, oh, it's just not my issue, move on from it. So I'm going to have to think about that. But I look at the people who are pushing it, and I sort of realize that all the demon people are pushing for these sacrifices to Moloch. So perhaps it's not a good idea. And I mean, if you look at the two crowds who are celebrating life and one's essentially celebrating death, how do you not on the side of celebration of life? And even from a constitutional issue, it's a 10th Amendment issue. And from like a societal civilization standpoint, it really builds a more stable society if people have consequences for their actions, if they have to form families, nuclear families. Single moms are not good for society, and people hear that and they get real triggered. I was raised by a single mom and I'm great. It's like, yeah, I'm talking about broad generalities. That's objectively been proven, crystal clear, true all over the place. Single moms have a detrimental effect on the next generation. That's just a crystal clear fact. There's no way to get around that. You do prison interviews, you find out what percentage of people in prison are coming from single moms. So maybe stuff like the patriarchy is a good idea, and maybe the people, as a conservative, someone who asks why the fence is up before you tear it down, maybe the people who are pushing, the globalists who are behind feminism and suffrage and all these kind of globalist, Bolshevik, Marxist ideas, maybe they're bad people who are pushing bad ideas that have a history of failure just because their kind of goal in life is to destroy nations. Once you destroy nations, you have an easily led group of people, because it's a mixed group of people are easily led, where unified people are strong people who are willing to sacrifice for their tribe. But if you have a mixed group of people, they won't sacrifice for the tribe, and they'll be easily led by outsiders, which is kind of the globalist game plan. I think you know what I'm talking about with that. So things like patriarchy is a good thing, and people who want to tear down nations and patriarchy and nuclear family and strong tribal groups and group preference, even the concept of ethno-nationalism, all those people who are against that are bad people, fundamentally, like biblically evil people. Strong family, tribe, and group preferences. Structure is needed, sticking close with your big family, your tribe, going to church, taking part in the community, a return to Jesus or Odin, a return to structure of your tribe. And I can't help but wonder if America has gone off base when corporations are paying for their workers to kill their babies. Yeah, I didn't think I would live to see this, and I'm not that old, but there are people who are having this conversation online who are older, and they're like, yeah, I'm just ready to check out. You're going to live to see horrors beyond your comprehension. I think Tesla said that, and yeah, absolutely. They could have had this issue, but it's like even the people on Twitter and Gab were talking about, like, yeah, you guys would have had it in the first trimester. There would have been some compromise on it, but they were talking about perinatal. Well, natal means birth and peri means after. They're talking about after birth abortions. That interview there was a couple of interviews that went viral where they're interviewing people and they're saying, yeah, we're gonna give birth to a 9-month baby, give birth to a baby, and keep it comfortable, and then the doctor and the mom will make a decision to delete the baby. And people saw those two interviews where they interviewed these two women and a doctor, two separate interviews, and they're like, the congressman is interviewing them and just getting that to ask, like, so are there any limits on this? And the women are like, not in the bill, no. And you know what that means? Like, you're talking about, so if there's no limits on this, you're talking about giving birth and then killing a child. Yes, that's effectively what they're talking about. There's no arguing with that. How do you can be willing to compromise on abortion in the first trimester for sure, but when those two interviews went out and the woman, when the doctor said, yeah, we're going to keep the baby comfortable, and then mom and the doctor will decide to delete it, it's like, oh, that's insane. You're insane. All these, like, you're just talking about a sacrifice to a demon, essentially. It's like, we can't live with these kind of people. If you're saying, oh, well, to think that you share the same geography, you breathe the same air as people who would kill babies. Like, babies born alive. We're not talking about first little trimester zygote type of thing. You're talking about babies, 9-month-old born kids. Like, well, why not? They're not really. Are they really self-aware when they're under 2 years old? To look at these people in the eye and realize, like, you're looking into this black hole abyss that kind of leads directly to hell. I mean, it would be better to have a peaceful dissolution of these 50 states into different states where, you look at like all the people who in the 80s were like these Christian Bible thumpers, and you kind of realize, oh yeah, people really do need structure, like really, really need structure. Otherwise, I mean, if you don't have a moral code, a dogma, it's like, so what's the Bolshevik moral code dogma? Well, there's none. It's like whatever, if you live in an economic zone, then it's whatever serves the economic puppet masters. Oh, so then you will live to see horrors beyond your imagination, such as corporations paying women to abort their babies so they can be back at work on Monday. Yeah. Or, drag queen story hour. It's like, oh, you created a nation of catamites and child sacrifice. Oh, so maybe those Bible thumpers were onto something? Yeah. Maybe they were. I'm not saying they were entirely. I mean, there's a lot of cringe, Tammy Faye Baker type of guys too. But like, turns out humans really, really need a structure. When you get rid of the religious structure, nature abhors a vacuum, and you fill it with Bolshevism. And Bolshevism is just, turns out to be, this is Bolshevism: child sacrifice and drag queen story hour. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. Join me over at Subscribestar and Patreon, where the videos are, believe it or not, even more unfiltered than this. And I will see you guys next episode.